Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the principles of wayfaring is that we acquaint ourselves with God to an extent that we feel comfortable sharing with God. Establish an intimate connection of friendship with God. What happens is that once God becomes an intimate friend and we become acquainted with Him, in the realest sense, the journey begins to commence. Otherwise, the journey just does not begin. But the unfortunate thing about our religious conditioning is reverence of God and the command of God, which has made God into the other and the unreachable one who we are constantly trying to please, and He is not the closest one. We don't know if God accepts us or not. Hence, we have to go to the friends of God to beseech them to pray on our behalf. Whereas the Quran says we are closer to the human than their own jugular veins. The Quran says God comes between an individual and his own soul. The Quran says, tell them, I am indeed very close. If they call me, I shall respond. And the Quran, beyond any other description of God in relation to human beings, calls Himself the friend of the faithful. Now, the uniqueness about friendship is that we can be ourselves with our friends. There is no formality. It is just the real thing that we are with our friends. Why? Because the friend, knowing who we are, has chosen to be a friend. So there is no judgment on part of the friend. Friends are beyond judging each other. They have embraced us as we are. And that is why we do not share with our parents or siblings or spouses or children as freely as we share with our friends. When our children offend us, we know we can't reason with them at times because they have their excuses. But we can talk to a friend, and the friend says, I actually understand what you are saying. The friend can very easily say that yes, they have done injustice to you, or the friend can actually say that maybe you have misjudged the situation. And when a friend says it, we will not find any offense. But the amazing thing is that even God and our relationship with God is shared with a friend as opposed to God. We can say to a friend, I actually feel distant from God. But we can't say that to God, despite the fact that He sees our intentions and understands our feelings. But we don't have that understanding and education or religious teaching that we should confide in God instead. But we will confide in a friend. We can say to a friend that I actually feel discontentment at the decree of God. We can say that, but we can't say that to God because it's not the right thing. I can't say that to God. It's as if God is like, the parent, or God is like the mujtahid, his supreme authority. I can't speak to Him like that. Why does that happen? Because the friend has embraced us as and how we are. And in that sense, our friend becomes the most proximate to us than anybody else. Now that belongs to God. Now that belongs to God. That is the right of God. At times we need to confess to God our sins. There is a need within us to do that. It relieves us of the burden. And that is why the confession boxes are very good practice. that people can go there, they feel at ease, they have shared their disappointments of their own selves with somebody else, and maybe there's some remedy to then encourage them to start afresh. We need to at times tell God, look, I'm feeling like a failure right now, and I need you by my side. At times we need to say to God, look, I can't really bear this. It's too much for me. As opposed to confiding in somebody else and saying, what God is testing me with right now, explain the reason for it, because I find it unbearable or unjust. We need to invoke God as a friend, and He designates Himself as a friend of the faithful. Say, oh God, I can't bear these trials, and I want you to share with you as a friend. I'm finding it burdensome. God, I just can't do this. God, I do not understand your ways here anymore. With a friend, you can say that unashamedly. What that does is it actually brings us to that level of openness within, where now we are exploring God through God and allowing ourselves to complete ourselves. Now, how beautiful are these sentiments conveyed in the du'as of the Imams. And I personally do not look at their miraculous natures. I look at their spiritual bonding with God to know that these people are of a supreme brand, cut from the substance of the Prophet himself. When Imam Ali says to Allah, who else do I have? Where do I turn to? Who do I go and complain? You're the only one I have. I will confide in you. Will you see me burn while I call out to you? Will you turn a deaf ear to me as you hear my screams of anguish? How can that be you, O God? But that is unbearable for me to think that a friend would just ignore me in my time of need. Can you not see that? How unashamedly, without embarrassment, he shared with God. How Imam Hussein turns to God and he says, I complain to you of what these people are doing to me. How Imam Zainul Abidin speaks with God and says, oh Allah, whenever I make a pledge with myself to awaken and to remember you, sleep overpowers me, slumber overtakes me. Lord, is it that you no longer wish to see me appear before you? Is it that my voice has become so displeasing to you? That level of openness with God, an intimate bonding and friendship, is what is required as an essential feature of spiritual wayfaring and inner growth. You see, the way the fourth Imam speaks with God holds the key to evolution and spiritual growth. And I've stated this on many occasions, that in one part of his dua he says, and I'm going to rephrase it slightly, it's like us talking with our friend. He said, look, you know that, right, I've done things that are displeasing to you, but you know very well that I have not done them in order to disappoint you or through lack of reverence and love for you. You know I'm a weak person, and my weakness drove me to those things. You know, and I know you know, that in my heart there is nothing but respect and love for you. And then he continues and he says, but I have to tell you this as well, O friend. Of course, the Imam calls him Lord. But I have to tell you this as well, O friend, that in the past, whenever I have done similar things, you have overlooked them and forgiven me. And that encourages me to not mend my ways. So if you look at it carefully, it's also your doing. You share in that blame as well. That is the very open, intimate bonding at the level of friendship that is needed with God. Once we can arrive at that point, we begin to find comfort deep there, that my beloved has accepted me as and how I am. He loves me more than I love myself. He cares for me. I can tell him anything, share whatever I want. A friend that will not leave my side. The Imams have expressed this in such eloquent manners. They have spoken to God and they've said, you are the friend for the one who has no friend. You are the pillar of support for the one who has no support. You are the treasure for one who has no wealth. You are my cave to which I retreat when I flee from the world. You are my light in dire darkness. This is the deep sense of belonging and friendship that we need to find with God in order to free us from ourselves and remove our impediments. What I would like us to take away from this discussion is that let us find time to engage with God beyond formalistic prayers, beyond chanting His name, to talk with Him meaningfully, to involve Him at that very deep emotional level, to share with Him unashamedly, and then see how much difference that makes qualitatively to our beings. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.